We're doing it. We're starting a golden pothos on a moss pole. I do have a little bit of experience with moss poles and some guidance if you are looking to start a plant on a moss pole or you don't know where to begin. I'm here to help you and share all the tips that I have. Before we get started, I just wanted to touch on a few things that's going to help you decide what to do with your plant to put on a pole or what to look out for. It honestly doesn't really matter what you use for support. In a sense, it does matter, but it doesn't. As long as their roots can anchor onto something and allow that climbing motion, they're going to size up. It's really going to need something to like wrap its roots into or onto and wrap around and mature. So that's why you see these huge climbing up on trees. You could use a wood plank, any kind of hardware wire like I use a lot. You could use a plastic pole as long as you have some damp moss in there to encourage those roots to really dig in and anchor in and climb. Now I did cut 3 vines. You don't have to do 3 vines, you can just do 1. Or you could do as many as you ideally would like. Just keep in mind as the plant climbs, the more vines you have, it's going to take over the pole more, it's going to look more full, and it is going to use up more water and nutrients, and that is important because those roots are competing with a bunch of other roots. 1 vine is going to grow a lot faster and bigger. It's like that 1 vine has to support that plant. So that's why I don't like to do too many vines, because usually if 1 vine is climbing for the plant and has grown like exponentially higher than the rest of the vines, when you go to chop it, you only are taking that 1 vine. And so that bottom part that you chopped still has all the small vines. You can try to take those out and put them into the new pole. I've done that plenty of times. And sometimes it helps and they start growing. We are going to do 3 for the golden at the same time, and we're going to see what happens. 1 vine may grow more variegated. 1 vine may not do as well. That's also why I like to do 2 or 3, because if you plant them and one just like rots or one doesn't do well, at least you have 2 others that could still grow. If you just do 1 and something happens to the 1, then you're not going to have anything. So my advice is to do like 2 or 3 and then go from there. So I try not to do just 1 unless it's an odd kind of plant that I'm just providing support for. You want to get the plant anchored onto the pole as soon as possible before it really starts to climb. So if they don't have anything to anchor onto, those leaves are not going to get big. They're going to go small again. When you first start a plant on a pole, it's going to take a little bit of time for those roots to start growing, for it to situate in the pot. Just like with any repotting you do, it doesn't start immediately growing right away. It takes a little bit of time to figure itself out, then it will start growing again. Same with a plant on a moss pole. As soon as you put it on a pole, you can't expect immediate results. It's going to take time. You have to have a lot of patience to do moss poles. They aren't going to grow how quickly you want them to. They're going to take their time. We're talking years to get them at the state of, some of my big plants behind me. And there's many factors that go into that, what you provide for them, the environment, what nutrients you're giving them, the light, all of that plays a role. But the most important thing is getting them started early so that they can start attaching and growing bigger leaves earlier. Another tip with cuttings is if you are taking them off of one of your current plants, choose a vine that is bigger than the rest of them. And what I mean is if that vine is already bigger and the leaves are a little bit bigger, then it won't take as long to start sizing up. You want like a good supported vine, not like a super skinny thin vine, because you can do those, but keep in mind it is going to take them a little bit longer to start climbing and getting more mature. So if you have cuttings that are a little bit more established, then those are going to perform better. And my advice too with cuttings is to do top cuts only. So choose 3 vines and cut an end off of each vine, just like what I did here with the golden. And let me show you an example. Like this is a pretty sturdy end of my trailing basket. Like these leaves are already pretty big. And then it started growing this as it was propagating, and you can see it's smaller because it doesn't have any support. So when I initially clipped this, it didn't have this growth yet. It was just those 2 leaves. But since it's been rooting in water for about, I would say 3-4 weeks, it's grown this. So ideally, I didn't really want this to happen until it was already climbing, because these roots need something to climb into. They're already starting to push out. As soon as these are into something moist and start growing, it's gonna help these leaves to size up. So you want like a good thick vine if you can find it. Now I decided to leave 2 nodes. You don't have to. I'm gonna plant this down with the 2 nodes. It just means more roots for the plant, which allows them to uptake more nutrients and to get more established. And you'll notice like bumps sometimes all along the vine. So just where there's a node doesn't mean that's the only spot where they root from. So as soon as those bumps are against some moisture, they're gonna start growing. So that's an important tip when you're choosing cuttings, to choose like an established vine. I have this vine. I have another vine that was pretty well established, and I left 2 nodes for extra roots. And then I also have this vine. This vine is the smallest out of the 3, and it only has 1 node with roots. So this one may not do as well. It may be the shorter vine of the bunch. I have a feeling this vine is going to perform the best because it's the most thick already, but who knows? That's just my little hunch. As far as the root system goes, you want to make sure that you have some secondary roots that are starting. And the substrate is very important. You can't just use potting soil because when you're doing a plant on a moss pole, your job is to keep that substrate moist so those roots can grow into it. They can get those nutrients and help the plant size up. So the base of the plant could easily get overwatered in the sense that it stays wet all the time. So you really need a free draining mix that is going to allow that runoff to happen. So I prefer a very aerated mix. I have like a moss pole mix that I use that's like maybe 20% of, like, whether you use a bagged soil, coco coir, whatever it is, and the other like 80 is like chunky stuff like perlite, pumice, orchid bark, charcoal, whatever it is that you can actually like chunk up so it's super aerated and free flowing. So when you literally pour water over it, that water is just going to come straight out the bottom in a matter of seconds. That's how aerated you need the mix to be. Now, choosing the type of pole, I debated on this all day today, and I actually am surprising myself. I'm not going to do a wire pole. I had every intention of starting this golden on a wire moss pole, like a lot of my poles back there. But I just extended my Monstera Esqueleto, that big one there in the back, and I extended it on Thiccly's large size grow pole, and it is 4 layers now. It's super steady. Now it is a very thick, hefty pole, don't get me wrong. You want to use it for a plant that's really going to get big, because if not, you're going to have a tiny plant on a huge pole, and that's just going to look weird. The reason that I'm deciding against a wire pole is that wire poles, one, they dry out faster and they're more difficult to water. They require a lot more maintenance to chop and to make and all of that. And those are the biggest reasons. But the positive thing with a wire pole is stability. They're going to be stable, and that's super important when you're doing a pole, especially once they get to be the size of some of these plants. The vine, I'm telling you, the vine gets so thick, bigger than like a couple fingers together. The leaves get top heavy. The top growth is larger, so they tend to lean. So it's very important to have a stable base and a stable pole. So that's why I love wire. But I do love these large grow poles, and that's what I'm going to do for my golden. I don't know if I'm going to regret that. I don't think I am, because of my Esqueleto, because it's a little over 5 feet and it's completely stable. Because of the extra moisture, because the backing is clear, the roots are going to grow a lot faster, and they're going to be able to multiply. And I find these poles a lot more easy to water than my wire poles. They don't take as long, and I can drown these, whereas the wire pole, they get dried out and compacted a lot more quickly, and they're a lot slower to water. So I think using a clear pole is going to really kickstart my golden into growing and climbing faster. So we talked about the roots and the substrate. I tend to start these in a 6-inch pot. You could do a 5-inch actually. I wouldn't do anything less than a 5-inch because it's going to become unstable. Stability is really, really important. Plus these large poles are really big, so I'm going to need probably a 6-inch for this guy. So I'm going to start mine in a 6-inch. Repot Me pots are my favorite. That's the pot I'm going to use. I think I have one left. And then I'm going to grab my aeroid mix. I'm going to throw in some slow release fertilizer. I am going to be trying out a liquid, which is exciting. I have talked to you guys about that. So the GT foliage focus, when it gets here, I'm going to start using it, but I am going to add some slow release in there just to have it in there. I'm not going to add a lot of it, but I just want some kind of nutrients in there. And then, yeah, we'll get her anchored on. We fill this with moss. I've done this so many times on my channel. I've filled these poles a ton. The large size does take a lot of moss. I'm gonna go ahead and fill it up to the top because these top vines are already going to be like halfway up of this pole. So I want to go ahead and just fill it all the way up to the top. Yeah, that'll pretty much be it. I'm super excited. I just feel like this plant is going to do so well. It's going to have a good start with using this kind of pole, and it's going to get better light than what I used to give my plants. It's going to get better nutrients. So I feel overall it's going to size up a lot quicker. I'm actually very excited to see how quickly this one's going to size up compared to the Marble Queen, looking back at everything. All right, I'm going to grab my supplies. I'm going to bend you guys down a little closer so you can see what I am doing, and we're going to build our golden pothos moss pole. All right, we have you guys down at center. So first thing you want to do is you want to build your pole. So if you are using a plastic pole like this, you want to fill it with moss and close it. And I do have a tutorial on my wire poles if you want more details on how to make one. All that's going to be linked down below. So with Thiccly poles, there is a bottom with the soil flaps here, and there is a top. So make sure that when you're building this that you make sure that you're putting the bottom in the actual pot itself. These are super easy. There are creases that you fold. So yeah, super easy. You just bend it, fill it with moss, and you close it. Like I said, I do this all the time on my channel. I already have some moistened sphagnum moss. I'm just going to wring it out and build my pole. Keep in mind, we are planting the bottom portion of this in the soil. So you want to make sure that you are not putting moss in the bottom like 5 inches or so, 4 or 5 inches, depending on the depth of your pot. So probably like here up, I'm going to fill with moss. I think it will be enough. Let me see. I'm going to close part of this up and see where we're at. I think that was a good enough amount. All right, so this is going to be our aeroid mix down in here. We have our space. I will probably have to extend this sooner than later because again, the plant, by the time I put the cuttings in, is probably going to go here, and once it starts climbing, it's going to climb fast. You'll want to extend this before it reaches the top because the extension goes to about here. And sometimes I extend them too late and the top node is already rooted in here and then you can't slide the new extension on. So once my plant gets to about here, I'm going to go ahead and extend it. Next, we are going to start with our soil. This is like a pretty good aeroid mix. It's mostly chunky stuff. It has all kinds of goodies in there. You just want something very, very aerated. I want to start filling the bottom part of this with the soil mix. I always center my pole for the best stability. So just taking this and inserting it right in the middle and then flip, and then we have our bottom part in here. So before I add my cuttings, I'm going to add a little bit of soil. All right, we got some base in there to work with. I'm just gonna do one at a time here. This is the one that I feel is gonna do the best. I'm gonna go ahead, so you wanna get those roots down far enough. So make sure you get your cutting down in there. I actually need to trim off some of this base, this extra space here I'm gonna cut. Okay, that's down there good. All right, we are going to anchor these vines at the end, but I just want to get these kind of down in here. Next cutting, same thing, get that down in there. And we're just going to kind of just stick them all in a row. This one here, I may have to cut. Yeah, I'm not gonna be able to use that bottom root. Unfortunately, it's too long, so that's okay. We're gonna cut that node away. All right, so this one we're gonna do on this side over here. And again, we're not gonna worry about the leaves yet. We'll get those anchored on last. We just wanna get the base potted up. Now that you have those roots down in there, if you have extra roots, feed them around the back of the pole. Next, you want to go ahead and you can add your fertilizer, you can add your soil conditioner, anything that you want to add. Throwing a little soil over top those roots. I want to add some myco. It just helps the roots out, especially since these guys are fresh roots. It's just going to, they're just beneficial fungi. I like to add a couple scoops into my pot. And I'm gonna throw in just a tiny bit of Osmocote. Probably a teaspoon we're gonna go ahead and add in. Okay, and then next we're going to fill up all the way around, and you're really going to compress the aeroid mix down in here, because if your mix is chunky, it's going to leave air pockets, so you really want to compress it. Especially here in the front where those roots are, you want to make sure that you are covering them pretty good. Especially since they are coming from water, they're going to want that moisture. So make sure that you're packing them in there pretty good. Okay, if feels good. It feels nice and filled up. All right, that is what our base is looking like. We are good down in here. And then next we're gonna focus on the leaves. I'm gonna pull you up a little bit and I will show you how to connect these to your pole. That is gonna give them the best chance. Okay, next you wanna see where your vines are. You could use like orchid clips, you could use little push pins. I'm gonna go for grafting tape because it's really gonna anchor the nodes against the moss and it's going to encourage rooting. And it's gonna also trap in moisture, not only from the front, but also with the closed back. It's going to really encourage those roots to attach into here. And keep in mind, the more roots that are growing and attaching into here, the better it's going to climb and mature. Because of those extra nutrients it can uptake, and just all those extra roots are going to help support the plant. So the important thing, like this one here, you can see this little aerial root here is it's in good position to literally get like right in there. I could just clip that if I wanted to, and that would be fine. I'm gonna choose to use the tape because I feel like that's going to help better position the nodes. So I'm probably going to do some on all three down here and up here. Let me get these situated first and then I will show you. Okay, down here I have 3 nodes, 1, 2, and 3. I'm going to use this grafting tape around these 3 is where I'm going to focus it first. And I just start on one side and I'm going to put this across the nodes, and I wrap this several times. But you do want to apply some pressure because you really want to get it as close as you can to the moss. Start wrapping a few times, kind of pulling each time so that it's really tight. You can use green plant Velcro too. You don't have to use grafting tape. I just prefer the clear tape because it's less visible. And again, it just traps in moisture better than Velcro can. Okay, next we have 3 more nodes. So we have 1, 2, and 3. So again, like I had just did down here, we're gonna move these leaves down like that, and we're gonna do the plastic wrap around these 3 nodes. My grow light went out. Okay, let me finish wrapping this. We're finishing up here anyway. Okay, I brought a little bit more light so you could see. Sorry, it's getting a little bit later in the day. So that next set of nodes is anchored. So we have that middle one and the bottom set. But we're not done. We have more nodes, so I'm going to anchor them one more time. Getting those nodes supported is literally the best way to get these kick started. So I have 3 more nodes. This middle one doesn't really need attached yet because it's not super prominent yet. It's just barely a new node. But this one is kind of flapping here and this one is kind of flapping. So we want to get those covered. So right where my thumb is going across, we're going to do the same thing. Don't worry about your leaves looking really weird. They will reposition themselves once they are growing towards a light source. So your plant may look kind of funky. Don't worry about that. Give it a few weeks to grow and the leaves will move towards the light. The most important thing is the nodes. Don't worry about the leaves right now. Yeah, that is literally perfect. So again, we have the bottom nodes anchored. We have the middle nodes anchored as well as the top nodes anchored. So those are right up against the moss. Your job is to keep the moss moist, which the clear pole does help, but it doesn't matter what kind of pole you have. The only thing that I have to do is thoroughly water the soil. Now, because this is very aerated and the roots came from water, this is going to dry out very quickly. So I have to keep in mind that I'm probably going to need to water this base probably within like 4 to 5 days again, as well as the moss. You can keep the moss as moist as you want. You can water every day if you want. And you can actually water this without watering the soil. Just you can tilt it. You can just water a little bit and you can see the water level as you water. Just stop it before it gets too low, because when the moss is wet, it still drips. So just stop it like here, and then it will only drip to like here and not all the way through. So I just have to keep in mind that this is going to dry out pretty quickly. Those water roots can handle a little extra moisture. We are all done, front and center. I ended up finding a ceramic to set this pot in. I don't have to. I could use like just a saucer for now, but that's what the pot's looking like. I gave it a really thorough drink. You can see some of the roots there. And using a ceramic will help the soil from not drying as quickly. It'll help stay a little bit more moist. And those roots, any extra water that drips into the cache pot, those roots will grow down and search for that water, which is going to help them build stronger roots. So I like setting them in a cache pot for that reason, but just keep in mind when you are watering that you are lifting the plant up out of there and emptying that extra water out. And then again, you can see the wrapping that I did on all 3 parts. And again, don't worry about the leaves if they're like turned the wrong way, you know, misshapen. They are going to grow and expand and move to the light source. So I have them sitting in front of some grow lights here. It's going to get some good forward light, and yeah, it should do well. I'm excited. I'll just make sure to keep the pole moist, and it should start taking off in a matter of weeks. I imagine it shouldn't take too long for this plant to start climbing. And again, I'll extend when we get to about here. So thank you for watching. I know it got to be a little bit later, so sorry for like the lighting issues towards the last part of this video. And I hope it was helpful. I can't wait to share updates on my golden. I can't wait to see it become like my marble queen. I'm so excited. So if you end up starting a golden pothos or any plant on a pole, just let me know. You can send me a picture of your plant, like tag me in a story or something, because I can usually see it. And yeah, it just makes me happy seeing like your guys' plant pictures and stuff and seeing them climb and grow. It makes me so excited. So again, if you have any questions, let me know down below. I hope this was helpful, and I will talk to you guys later.